The forest was alive with light, but not the kind Ryan was used to. It glowed softly from plants and fungi that seemed to hum under the touch of the wind. The air smelled sharp, like iron and wet soil mixed with something sweet, almost like honey. Ryan adjusted his helmet visor and stepped carefully, each footfall making the glowing moss sway as if greeting him. He had been sent here to survey the edge of human-colonized space, a place untouched and unclaimed. It was meant to be quiet, routine. But from the moment he landed, he felt as if the forest was watching. The mission had started with 3 other humans, all trained explorers and soldiers. But Ryan had wandered ahead, drawn by a glimmer between the trees. The shimmer grew brighter as he approached, and then he saw her. She was small, shockingly small, barely a foot tall, and yet her presence was commanding. Her armor was dented and scorched, her tiny helmet cracked, but she stood on trembling legs, fists clenched at her sides. Her eyes, large and dark, locked on Ryan, full of suspicion and something else. Fear. Ryan froze. In his experience, aliens either ran immediately or attacked. She did neither. She just stood there, trembling like a leaf in a storm, yet radiating the strength of a warrior. "Hey," Ryan said softly, holding up his hands. "I'm not going to hurt you." She tilted her head, her eyes narrowing but did not move. Her tiny frame seemed fragile, yet her aura was fierce. Ryan approached slowly, careful not to frighten her further. He noticed the blood on her tiny arm and the splinters around her. She had been trapped. Without thinking, he knelt and lifted a fallen branch, trapping her leg. She shrieked, a high-pitched sound, and flinched as he touched her arm to help free her. She shook violently at the contact, her small body trembling like a leaf. Ryan held her arm gently. "It's okay. I'm helping," he whispered. She didn't run. She didn't resist. She only shivered, looking at him as if his touch was both dangerous and miraculous. Ryan felt a strange connection. He had handled countless alien species, but none reacted like this. Carefully, he carried her back to the temporary camp he had set up. She squirmed slightly, but he could tell she trusted him enough not to flee. Once at the camp, he placed her on a blanket and examined her injuries. Her armor was scratched and dented, and her small limbs were bruised. Ryan treated her carefully, cleaning and dressing wounds while speaking in soft, calm tones. "You're a warrior," he said. "I can see it in your eyes. But even warriors need help sometimes." The tiny alien's body still shook, and she flinched whenever he touched her. But slowly, the shivering eased. She stared at him with large, expressive eyes. Ryan guessed she understood his intent, even if she could not speak. Over the next few hours, Ryan learned small things. She could make sounds, almost like clicks and whistles, and gestures that seemed meaningful. He mimicked some of them, and she repeated after him, a careful dance of communication. Her name, he discovered eventually, was Lyra. Lyra's story was fragmented. She had been scouting her planet when raiders attacked, capturing or destroying anyone in their path. She had escaped, but was injured, almost killed, and her tiny frame had been no match for the weight of the debris that trapped her. Ryan felt respect and a protective urge for this tiny but fearless warrior. As night fell, the forest's glow grew stronger. Bioluminescent plants lit the canopy in shifting colors. Ryan and Lyra sat near a small fire he had managed to start. He noticed her watching him closely, her eyes reflecting the dancing flames. For the first time, she allowed herself to lean slightly closer. "Do you trust me?" Ryan asked quietly, unsure if she could answer. She didn't speak, but tilted her head slightly, a small gesture that felt like agreement. Ryan smiled softly. "Good. Then we can work together." The night was filled with strange sounds, but Ryan felt safe with her near him. She moved in small, careful circles, inspecting the fire, the supplies, and even him. It was clear she had never seen a human up close, never experienced kindness from anyone. Ryan remembered his own training. Soldiers were taught that understanding alien behavior was as important as combat skills. But Lyra was different. Her reactions were subtle, layered with fear, pride, and curiosity. She shivered whenever he moved too quickly or touched her arm, yet she lingered nearby. He reached out slowly, letting his hand hover near her shoulder. She froze, trembling slightly. Ryan whispered, "It's okay. You're safe." Gently, he touched the top of her tiny arm again. This time, her shudder was less violent, almost like recognition. She looked up at him with wide eyes, as if asking silently, "Why are you different?" The bond was fragile, but growing. Ryan knew that in a world where Lyra's kind fought to survive constantly, trust was not given lightly, and yet here she was, a warrior trained for war, allowing a human to care for her. Suddenly, a loud vibration shook the ground. Ryan's communicator beeped urgently. He grabbed it. The raiders were in orbit, their ships visible as silhouettes against the planet's moons. Ryan's heart sank. They were fast, organized, and armed with devastating weapons. He looked at Lyra. She tensed immediately, small fists clenching. He noticed something remarkable. Though tiny, she carried herself with the readiness of a soldier prepared for battle. Ryan smiled faintly. "I think you're going to show them what tiny warriors can do." Lyra tilted her head, her small body shaking, but her eyes burned with determination. Ryan set his jaw. He knew he had to protect her, but also knew she could help. He had never seen a warrior like her, tiny, yet formidable. Her kind relied on speed, agility, and cunning, and Ryan had to adapt to her scale and strengths. He spent the next hours working with her, teaching basic coordination between human and alien movements. Lyra responded quickly, picking up cues with astonishing intelligence. Ryan guided her hand to aim a small energy blaster he had modified for her size. She flinched slightly at first, then gripped it firmly. When he gently pressed her shoulder to steady her aim, she shivered, but no longer in fear. Her body responded to trust. By morning, a bond had formed. Ryan could see it in her eyes, respect, curiosity, and something almost like hope. They were ready, as much as they could be, for whatever the raiders would throw at them. When the first scout ship descended, Ryan and Lyra were in position. She moved swiftly through the undergrowth, her small size allowing her to approach undetected. Ryan provided cover from a distance, marking targets and warning her of incoming fire. She darted like a shadow, disabling weapons, causing chaos, and striking with precision. Each time he touched her shoulder to guide her or steady her aim, she shivered slightly, but it was a shiver of recognition rather than fear. The raiders were confused by her size and speed, underestimating her at first. Ryan marveled at her courage. She was not only fighting for herself, but for the bond they had formed. Every move she made carried a message. Even the tiniest warrior could hold the power to change the battlefield. As the day ended, Ryan realized the forest, the alien lights, and the tiny warrior before him had shifted something inside him. Lyra had shown him that strength was not measured by size or firepower alone. Courage, trust, and connection could be just as deadly and beautiful. Ryan knelt beside her as she returned from scouting. She looked at him, her chest rising and falling, exhaustion evident. Yet there was a spark of something new. He reached out gently, touching her arm once more. This time, her body stiffened only briefly, then relaxed, allowing him to hold her hand with no resistance. "Thank you," he whispered. "I couldn't have done this without you." Her tiny fingers twitched against his, as if acknowledging the sentiment. Ryan knew that what they shared was rare, fragile, and powerful. In a world where fear and violence dominated, trust between two beings from different worlds had become their secret weapon. And as the shadows of the raider ship stretched across the glowing forest, Ryan realized that tomorrow would bring greater challenges. But for now, with Lyra by his side, he felt ready to face anything. She, a tiny warrior who shivered at human touch, had already changed the course of his journey, and perhaps the fate of her planet. Dawn broke over the glowing forest, painting the sky in pale oranges and soft purples. Ryan rose from the camp, stretching, while Lyra moved beside him with her tiny but confident steps. The events of the previous day weighed on him. The battle had only been a small skirmish, and the raiders were still in orbit, ready to strike with full force. He glanced at Lyra, who looked back with determination. Her small armor scratched but intact, her eyes sharp and unyielding. "You ready?" Ryan asked quietly. She tilted her head, a tiny nod. He smiled, amazed at how much courage this small alien possessed. It was one thing to be a warrior in a disciplined army. It was another to fight knowing the enemy could crush you in a heartbeat. Yet here she was, ready to face danger again. The first task of the day was reconnaissance. Ryan climbed a low ridge to scout the raider landing site while Lyra darted through the underbrush, moving silently as shadows of a small predator. Her small size allowed her to move unseen, slipping between roots and moss-covered rocks, her tiny energy blade strapped to her back. Ryan's heart swelled with admiration for her. She moved with precision, every step calculated, showing instincts far beyond her size. Through the scope of his visor, Ryan watched the raider ships preparing for a descent. The soldiers in their armor were massive compared to Lyra. He knew that a direct fight would be deadly for her, but her agility and intelligence could turn the tide if they coordinated carefully. He tapped his communicator. "Lyra, approach from the north ridge. Avoid the open ground. I'll mark targets for you." She paused briefly, looking back at him as if confirming that she understood. Then she moved like a whisper through the forest, disappearing among the glowing plants. Ryan felt a twinge of anxiety. Even though he had trained with humans and aliens alike, trusting a tiny warrior in enemy territory was unnerving, but he knew her capabilities. Lyra's small frame was her greatest advantage. Hours passed with careful coordination. Ryan guided her through the comms, marking weak points on raider equipment and signaling when to strike. Lyra moved with deadly efficiency. She sabotaged a supply drone, disabled a security turret, and even managed to disable the power conduit of a small raider landing craft. Every time Ryan touched her shoulder or arm to guide her, she shivered, but no longer in fear. Her body recognized his touch as guidance, as partnership, not threat. By midday, the raiders realized they were being targeted. Panic spread among them. No one expected such a precise and intelligent opponent. Ryan watched as Lyra, tiny but unstoppable, darted in and out of their defenses. Each attack she made was deliberate, calculated, and efficient. She was proving that strength was not measured by size or weaponry alone. Ryan noticed a flicker of something in her eyes. Hesitation. The raider commander, a massive alien with armor shining like black steel, had begun advancing toward her position. Lyra froze, tiny hands gripping her energy blade. Ryan felt his chest tighten. He had trained for situations like this, but protecting someone so small from a towering adversary was different. He sprinted through the underbrush, dodging enemy fire, until he reached a vantage point above her. "Lyra!" he shouted softly, careful not to alarm her. "Watch his left side, I'll cover you." She glanced up, her tiny form shivering for just a moment. Then she adjusted her stance, eyes locking on the commander. Her small blade hummed as she readied it. Ryan could see the tension in her body, the way her muscles coiled like springs. She was ready. But he could also see that the touch of fear remained, a reminder of her vulnerability, and yet her courage was stronger. The battle began in earnest. Ryan fired selectively, disabling raider weapons and drawing attention away from Lyra. She moved like a streak of lightning, small but relentless. Every strike she made was precise, striking vital points of the enemy's armor with expert accuracy. The commander roared in frustration, swinging a massive blade, but Lyra darted behind him, striking again and again. Ryan marveled at her resilience. He had faced powerful enemies before, but he had never seen courage concentrated in such a tiny form. At one critical moment, the commander swung his massive arm toward Lyra. She barely avoided it, rolling to the side, her body shaking as adrenaline coursed through her. Ryan leaped from the ridge, landing between them, using his body to shield her. She froze for a moment, her eyes wide, then glanced at him. He gently touched her arm, steadying her. She shivered again, but this time the shiver was fleeting. She had learned that his touch was protection, not harm. Together, they fought as a team. Ryan's strength and size complemented Lyra's speed and precision. She darted and slashed, while he provided cover and support, blocking blows that would have crushed her. The raider commander, confused and frustrated, underestimated her small size, and it became his undoing. With a final coordinated move, Ryan distracted the commander with a feint, while Lyra struck the final blow. Her energy blade found the weak joint in his armor, and the massive warrior collapsed. Lyra's small chest rose and fell rapidly, exhaustion written clearly across her face. Ryan approached her, kneeling beside her. He gently touched her arm to check for injuries. She flinched slightly, as always, but then leaned into his hand, allowing him to hold her gently. "You were amazing," he said softly. "I couldn't have done it without you." She looked up at him with wide eyes. For the first time, there was no fear in her expression, only acknowledgement and respect. Ryan smiled, feeling a warmth he hadn't expected. Despite the danger, despite the battles, this tiny warrior had shown him what true courage and partnership meant. The raider soldiers, seeing their commander defeated and their weapons sabotaged, began retreating to their ships. Ryan and Lyra pursued only as far as necessary to ensure their escape, careful not to overextend themselves. The forest was quiet once more, bathed in the soft glow of the bioluminescent plants. The threat had passed, at least for now. Ryan sat on a fallen log, Lyra perched on his knee, small fingers brushing against his hand. "You know," he said quietly, "you're more than just a warrior. You're special, brave, smart, and precious." She froze, her tiny body trembling slightly. Ryan realized that the shiver was not fear. It was recognition. Recognition of respect, of care, of the bond they had formed. He smiled, gently rubbing her small shoulder. She looked at him, and for a moment, words were not needed. The understanding was clear. Trust had been earned, courage had been shared, and a connection had been formed that neither of them had expected. Over the next few hours, Ryan helped Lyra tend to her minor injuries. She allowed him to guide her movements, steady her tiny hands, and even touch her arm where bruises still ached. Each touch elicited a brief shiver, a reminder of her past, but it also reinforced the trust between them. She was learning that being small did not mean being weak, and that care could coexist with strength. As night fell, they sat together by the fire, watching the forest glow in silence. Lyra leaned against Ryan's shoulder, a small but significant gesture. He felt her tiny heart beating against him, fast but steady. In that moment, he knew that she was not just an ally in battle, but a companion in life. A tiny warrior, shaken by human touch, had opened herself to connection, and he had opened himself to understanding strength in a new way. The forest around them seemed to sigh, the wind carrying whispers through the glowing foliage. Ryan and Lyra had survived the first battle, but more challenges would come. The raiders were likely regrouping, planning their next move. Yet for now, they had each other. And in a universe full of unknown dangers, that bond was more powerful than any weapon. Ryan looked at Lyra, her tiny frame still trembling faintly from exhaustion. He smiled softly. "Rest now," he whispered. "Tomorrow we fight again, but together." She tilted her head, her large eyes meeting his. The shiver that ran through her this time was gentle, fleeting, almost like an acknowledgement. She had survived, she had fought, and she had learned that trust could exist even in a harsh world. Ryan knew, deep in his heart, that this tiny warrior would change the course of their mission, and perhaps the fate of her planet. He felt a surge of hope, rare and pure. In a universe that often measured worth by size, strength, or firepower, he had discovered something more: courage, trust, and the bond between two beings from different worlds. As the glowing forest whispered around them, Ryan held Lyra close, careful not to squeeze, careful to respect her space. And for the first time since he had landed on this strange world, he felt a profound sense of peace. The tiny warrior shivered once more, faintly, and rested against him. Ryan smiled, realizing that in the midst of battles and alien worlds, they had found something rare and precious: connection. And sometimes, he thought, that was the greatest victory of all.